Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Woo! Been waiting for it all day, baby. Let's go. There's
Let's
definitely
go.
some questions I'm not even sure of yet.
Got some good stuff in here. We've actually
Yeah, you
we've got a lot. I mean, it's always a lot because it's rapid fire. Right?
It's always a lot.
So do you buy or sell the performance of the new offensive tackles as the most important position group question Notre Dame has going into this season?
I had to really think about this one, but being the most important position group, I'm going to sell it. And I went back and forth on this one multiple times. Okay. But I'm going to say wide receiver is the most important position group going into the season because
it's not position group. It's the biggest question, position group question.
Oh,
okay. So in other words, like if you looked at if you looked at each position group and like, what's the biggest question for this position group?
Got you. Okay.
Would the tackles be at the top of the list in terms of all the position group questions?
One of them, yes. Not both, but since it's a position group, it has to have both. But I think one tackle is going to be just fine. I think the other one is a question right now. So, yeah, I'll say it's the most important position group question going into the season. Yes, I will buy it.
I think so as well, because, like, if you go through, like, okay, quarterback, really the only question to me is the health of Riley Leonard. And, again, it's like there's a chance that he goes through the entire season and nothing happens. There's a chance that, like just like with any player that, there's an Aaron Rodgers situation in, the first series of literally, but again, it's like that for any, but again, so that's the biggest question there. Offensive line, we hit that. Running back, what's the biggest? Are no real questions there. The depth is fine. They have two high-end running backs. No real question there. Receiver, what's the question? Like the biggest question, I guess, is that group going to perform at the level that we think they're going to perform at?
Yeah, right.
Not a huge question, really, right?
Yep.
Tight ends, like, could you throw tight end in there just because of the health of Mitchell Evans and that kind of thing?
I just don't like having position group questions based on health. You know what I mean? I feel like you kind of have to throw that out the window as far as like why it's a big question mark. So I would say tackles are still the more important question mark, and we're just talking from a playing standpoint because we don't even know who one of them is going to be.
Yeah. So then again, cornerback, the only real question there is, well, there are two questions. Morrison's health, and then with that, the depth, behind him, how that group is going to perform. Like if Benjamin Morrison misses the Texas A&M game, for example, like that would be a question mark. I think the linebackers are going to be fine. The defensive line is going to be fine. The safeties are going to be fine. So I think that this is probably it. Specifically, again, like the question was tackles plural, but the right tackle is the biggest, probably the biggest question that they have on the team, just to, in terms of overall stability for the team. Right tackle.
Agreed.
And that actually, even though Salty's not here today, that came in last week and we weren't able to use it. And I'd been meaning to slip it in there basically for the last week, and I was finally able to get it in there today. So even though Salty's not here, we got a Salty question in with that one in rapid fire.
Nice.
So Notre Dame 2025 quarterback commit Deuce Knight spoke with Adam Brenneman from CBS Sports and Next Up with Adam Brenneman. And he had some interesting things to say, starting with the coolest moment he's experienced as a recruit. So here's Deuce Knight.
I feel like the game where we played USC at Notre Dame, we blasted USC. Number one pick, Kel Williams is a great player, but that night they made him look average. So, that was great. Storming the field, having everybody hyped, the recruiting momentum, seeing Marcus Freeman hyped, being in that locker room, that was great.
So, Vince, anything stand out from what you heard there from Deuce Knight?
I mean, the fact that he was enamored with the atmosphere and what Notre Dame did to Caleb Williams and storming the field and all that. That was awesome. I'm glad that he was totally engaged in that moment, because a lot of times recruits can be, not feeling certain things and kind of numb to a lot of different things. And that was awesome. I love that. A Notre Dame fan should be real happy to hear that.
Stymie, you have the best ear of the day. Again,
yeah, good job
what
there.
you hear is what you hear, but like that's what stood out to me. He dropped 2 we's in there, if I'm not mistaken. We beat USC, and he said, we stormed, all this different stuff. And for a guy who's being questioned about, how solid is his commitment and all this kind of stuff, this interview was just over the weekend. And when you hear him, like, he didn't say Notre Dame beat USC, he said we beat USC. So he already considers himself part of this thing. And I just like Sean. Everything that we've seen and heard from Deuce Knight says he is firmly implanted and entrenched at Notre Dame. And so that's what stood out to me, is just him dropping those we's like he's already part of the team, basically.
Awesome. I'm glad you could make that out.
Well, and it was a little hard because, one, they did play some background music in their little video that they posted on Twitter, which not a fan of. And there's also, as you'll hear in some of these other clips, they're like standing on a football field and there's a PA announcer and stuff like that. So
even better.
Not everything.
That's all right. I
is completely. Focus. And I would say this, I agree with what Sloppy Joe is saying as well. For a high school kid, he speaks, you can tell he's been out there in front of the media quite a bit. He's getting his share of media opportunities, and he speaks more like a seasoned veteran than he does a kid in high school. Okay, so next one. Deuce was also asked, why Notre Dame?
I feel like it's the people, Coach Freeman, Coach Gino, they are great people, my quarterback's coach at Notre Dame, he really poured all his time into me, all the resources that Notre Dame can give me to help me have a better life in the future. I feel like it was ultimately the best place for me.
You really like that music that they're playing there, don't you, Vince?
I'm trying to listen through the music, and
I know. I wish I had the ability to filter that out. But so I guess my question here is, you hear him talking about Gino Guidugli.
Sure.
Is Gino, do you think he's kind of an underrated part of this whole quarterback recruiting process?
It's hard because I don't think he's underrated by anybody that's listening to this show or you and me. I mean, he's obviously a very big part of recruiting quarterbacks to Notre Dame. He's the quarterback's coach. And last spring, when Deuce was on campus, and I'm not talking about spring of 24, but spring of 23, when he was on campus, he was attached at the hip to Gino. I mean, right. they were like 2 peas in a pod during practice. You know what I mean? And so you could tell from that point, like, Gino's a huge part of this. And so maybe he doesn't get the national credit that he probably deserves. And maybe a lot of that goes to Marcus Freeman or Chad Bowden or whatever, who are all big parts of this. And maybe he deserves a little bit more national credit, but I think he gets the proper amount of credit from people like us. Like we know how important he is to the recruiting of the quarterback position. So I think he gets the right amount.
Yeah. Well, it definitely feels like, I mean, Marcus Freeman deservedly gets, the amount of respect and attention he does for recruiting and the relationships. And you'll hear what Deuce has to say about him in a second as well. Chad Bowden gets heaps of the credit. It feels like most of it is them. And like when it comes to the assistants, it's kind of like you only hear from the boss when something goes wrong. It's like when it comes to the rest, like the assistants, it feels like sometimes that's really the only time you talk about them when it comes to recruiting. But like, I think if you looked at CJ Carr, Marcus Freeman, and of course, Tommy Rees both played a big hand in that, and Bowden as well. But
sure,
there was definitely much more Marcus Freeman, just because, remember, Gino wasn't here yet during the bulk of that recruitment. But these last couple of guys, whether it's Duce Knight or Noah Grubbs, it feels like you're definitely hearing them talk much more about Gino Guidugli. Deservedly so. But like Gino's like when you go to the media sessions and you talk to him, it's just like he's kind of a dude, and it's like you can see why they would be drawn to him, just kind of the demeanor that he has and the personality that he has. And that's obviously a huge part of it. All right, I've got to get the next cut loaded up here. I did all that, and I forgot to load the next one up.
That's
He's
all right.
talking about Marcus Freeman, his head coach, more Deuce Knight.
Freeman, man, he a real cool guy, real laid back guy. He gonna show a lot of love all the time. You know? He gonna treat you like you're his own kid. Like anytime I'm around, he try to show me love, try to show my family love. So I feel good about it.
What do you think, Vince?
Doesn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form. He's always showing me love, show my family love. Like, that's Marcus Freeman in a nutshell. And I am not surprised by that in any way.
Yeah, and I'm going to play that one more time because it was hard to hear.
Freeman, man, he a real cool guy, real laid back guy. He gonna show a lot of love all the time. You know? He gonna treat you like you're his own kid. Like anytime I'm around, he try to show me love, try to show my family love. So I feel good about it.
Double-edged sword, treating you like one of your, you're one of his own kids, right? It's like that can go both ways.
Yeah, it certainly can. Yeah,
but
it certainly can.
But again, it's like you very rarely hear any of these guys, and and remember, were you here last week when we had the anonymous quote from a coach? I think maybe Jesse was here when we were talking about it. It showed up in one of the magazines saying, "Oh, Marcus Freeman, I think, he hasn't exactly been Newt Rockney over there. He's not exactly tearing it up. I think the real glue to that whole thing is Al Golden." Like,
that's the most asinine comment I've ever heard.
Right.
That's what I think about that. I mean, Marcus Freeman's the one who brought in Al Golden. I mean, he's running a version of Marcus Freeman's defense. It's not like Al Golden's behind the scenes pulling the strings. That is not at all what is occurring. Like, that shocks me.
And I'm not saying Al Golden doesn't have a good personality, but it's not like it's like it's not the Al Golden personality that's holding this whole team together.
Correct. Yeah, he's not the one out busting his hump on the recruiting trail like Marcus Freeman is. Like, that is not occurring. I'm not saying he's not doing a good job, but he's not doing that. So I would love to sit down with whoever this is and be like, can you just explain your answer as to why you think that this is what is actually taking place? But again,
I think the other thing that maybe we already take for granted that wasn't going on before is like, here's a high-end quarterback recruit, and he's not the only one talking about the head coach talking to him and having actual interaction with him. Right? Wasn't going on 3 years ago and previously.
No, it was not.
Huge difference in the kind of personality and the willingness to engage with these guys and not just come in at the end of the recruitment. These guys, the majority of them, hear from the head coach early on in the process and not the end of the process. Huge difference there.
You're not just a closer.
Again, right. So when you talk about keeping recruiting classes together, keeping guys engaged, keeping them committed, both in the recruiting process and on the flip side, with the fact that they got it to the end of spring and they didn't have any more transfers than what they had, all of that goes a long way, and it starts with the head coach. It's not in spite of the head coach.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, last one from Deuce Knight. He is a left-hander, and Adam Brenneman asked him if he has anything to say to lefty haters.
The quarterback just went to the national championship. He went 8 overall. So you don't like lefty quarterbacks. Don't like the first-round pick.
Lefty quarterback just went to the national championship game. Of course, he's talking about Michael Penix and was also a first-round pick. That's his answer. Of course, Deuce is a lefty, and that's why that question came up. Are you a lefty lover, Vince?
I am not a lefty lover, but I could care less either direction. You know what I mean? Like, I will say catching balls from a lefty versus a righty is two completely different things. It is. It's
I've never caught a pass from a left-handed quarterback before. I thought about that, like when I was a kid.
I have, and it's weird, but I've also been a catcher where I've caught lefties and righties, and that kind of a thing. And it's
it obviously comes in a little bit different.
Yeah. And football is the same way, to be honest, because it spins a little bit. It spins opposite, obviously. Right. And so it's different. And you just have to get used to it. Now, It would be very difficult if you were going back and forth, righty, lefty, like that would be complicated. But once you get used to it, it's fine.
It's funny because I just watched a Football Life. It's like one of the 1 hour things that the NFL Network does on different players. It was on Jerry Rice. And Jerry was talking about making the Joe Montana to Steve Young transition. And of course, Steve Young was a lefty. And he said it was really weird catching those passes from Steve Young. And so they had some, I don't know if it was an intern, someone low on the totem pole who happened to be left-handed. I think he might have played, small college football or something like that. And after practice, Jerry Rice would take hundreds of balls from this guy because he was a left-hander, so he could get used to taking that ball from Steve Young. So he said it did have a noticeable difference. But again, I've never actually caught any kind of pass from a left-hander. Anyone who's ever thrown me a football was always right-handed. So a little bit different.
It is different. Yes, it is different for sure.
I'm sure that when Deuce gets here next spring, all of the receivers are going to get some kind of question about taking passes from a left-hander.
I'm sure.
Instead of a right-hander.
It'll happen. And look, it's a legitimate question. They'll downplay it, but it is still a legitimate question. I mean, it is.
Yep. So Notre Dame is going to host Michigan State in 2026. They made that announcement last week. When that happens, do you buy or sell that game as primetime worthy?
I'm going to sell it for right now from what I know about Michigan State and who they are. I do think they're on the rise, though. And depending on how much of a rise they have this year going into next year, it's a possibility. But for now, I'll sell it. But I have no problem with Michigan State being a night game for Notre Dame. I really don't. They're an old rival, all of those different things. And I need to look at the 26 schedule to see the other options.
The only other options, and it's going to depend on how many primetime games they want. They're going to play Wisconsin at Lambeau, but that's considered a Shamrock Series game. So that means NBC will have the rights to it. They'll also host Miami that year. And there's basically nobody else they'll be at USC that season. So I would say those are the three prime candidates. And because Michigan State is a Big Ten team and they're relatively new contract with NBC, I think there's a really good chance that it ends up in primetime, regardless of how good Michigan State is, just because it's a Big Ten team and it'll give NBC a chance to get it in, to get it on there.
That's a fair statement. It's very interesting. They got Michigan State and Purdue back to back, which is interesting. But
and I've seen Purdue still on the schedule in 26, but I haven't seen any, like when you look at that website, with the college football, the FBS football schedules. I don't know. Like, I thought that the series that they signed, the contract they signed with Purdue was only a 2-year deal. I didn't realize it extended into 2026. So I've got to do some.
Apparently it's a 4-year deal because then they go back to Notre Dame to open the season.
Well, I know it's on the website. But again, I haven't found anything that says there's an actual contract that says that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do know what you're saying.
Okay, so yesterday, Vince, I asked Jesse which all-time USC football player he would make a Notre Dame player.
What was his answer?
His answer
was OJ, wasn't it?
Honestly, I can't remember because he always does. Well, here are 50 different USC players who would fit into the bill. And I'm trying to remember who he said now.
Not an answer.
I think he might have said Reggie Bush, if I remember right. I think he might have said Reggie, but I can't remember.
That's the right answer.
Yeah, but, I'll text him here. Mine was Marcus Allen. Was who? I went
going
with.
A little old school. I appreciate it. That's kind of there's some cowboy bias in there, but that's okay.
How's our cowboy bias? Marcus Allen never played for the Cowboys.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking about somebody else, maybe. Okay, sorry. I just like to throw cowboy
just like everybody else.
Yeah,
just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, I think, is what Andrew said. But when you think about it, it's actually a really good answer because, like, when you think about, like, if Notre Dame had that elite level of quarterback the last 2 years, as opposed to what they had, they're probably in the playoff at least one of those 2 years, if not both. I know you hate him because he went to USC, but
I didn't like him when he was at Oklahoma either.
Okay.
So it's a hate that goes beyond just the rivalry lines.
So my question to you today, Jesse got USC yesterday.
Yeah.
You get Michigan today. Which Michigan player would you make a Notre Dame player?
This is tough, man. This is really tough. And I've been thinking about this one for a while. And I'm having a hard time coming up with somebody because
you are.
A lot of the players that were good at Michigan were hated at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And I can't go down that road. I don't really have a good answer for this. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I have been thinking about this most of the day. And I mean, Phil has a good one. Charles Woodson. I don't think
one of the first ones I thought of.
I don't think there's a lot of animosity between Notre Dame fans and Charles Woodson. So I could get on board with Charles Woodson, all-time great player, obviously, Heisman Trophy winner, great on defense, great on offense. Cool. Like, that's a great answer. I'll go with Phil and go with that answer because it's certainly not going to be Desmond Howard. It's not going to be Tom Brady. It's not going to be anybody like that. Like, that's never.
It's not going to be anybody good. I hated them all, no matter what.
Hated them all. It's not gonna happen. Not gonna go with their most recent quarterback. Like, I'm not going anywhere near that. So,
yeah, I think Stymie says if anyone says Desmond Howard, so help me. I think I would roll Desmond Howard out because he was close enough to Rocket Ismail's time that
that's
it's
true.
Like, we had Notre Dame had Rocket Ismail. What do you need Desmond Howard for? Like, Rocket was the better of the two, even if Desmond got a Heisman out of the deal.
And I think Desmond Howard has hit the ire for Desmond Howard has just grown even
and the
more.
Lingering, the fact that he's on game day now doesn't help anything.
And he's such a homer that it's so painfully obvious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So did you actually give an answer to that, or did
I'll go with Charles Woodson. He's far enough
with Woodson. You'll just
behind,
settle.
like far enough back where I don't think there's a lot of hatred or a lot of animosity, that kind of a thing. I just can't remember thinking like, man, I wish he played for Notre Dame. Like, there are some times where I'm watching a team that Notre Dame's playing. It's like, man, I wish he was on my team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I just never really got that feeling.
Because like even when Tom Brady was playing, like nobody thought of Tom Brady that way.
No,
at all.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. Like, I was surprised he got drafted, and he barely did get drafted, obviously.
Right.
But, nobody saw that coming. Not even the Patriots.
Stymie says Harbaugh if he had to pick someone. And see, like, even, again, like when I look at now, I wouldn't pick Harbaugh just because of now. Just because of, like, what he's turned into.
Yes.
Aiden Hutchinson's a pretty good one. Anthony, that's actually, I didn't think about him.
He's a really good player, and I just don't like him because he went to Michigan. So
mine is really boring, but I just went with Dan Deerdorf, old offensive lineman. Wow. Like, even though Notre Dame forever has had some really good offensive linemen, but Deerdorf, I remember talking to him when he came in town a long time ago for the College Football Hall of Fame, and obviously, he was a good guy, and like. I never had anything against him when he was doing Monday Night Football. Maybe somebody else did, So I just feel like Deerdorf would kind of be. He's the guy, because again, like Harbaugh, too much baggage at this point. Howard, too much baggage at this point. Maybe Charles Woodson, because again, like really good defensive back and returner and all that kind of stuff.
And he doesn't rub people the wrong way, which is a huge plus in my book. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
He loves where he went to school, and I appreciate that, but he's just not out there rubbing it in people's faces.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Baylor, Indiana, Louisville, Minnesota, Nevada, Rutgers, Tulane, and Virginia are selling pairs of tickets for their home games at Costco.
It's hilarious.
I just realized I left Costco out of the question that, but it's at Costco.
I figured because of the last part, but
yeah,
I think it's hilarious, but I also think it's necessary. So I don't really have a problem with it. I actually think it's pretty good advertising if you're having trouble selling out your stadium, where else are you going to sell tickets?
Why not?
I think that's a bit of a, honestly, that's a bit of an impulse buy if you're at Costco.
You're at Costco and it's like, hey, I can get a pair of football tickets.
That's an impulse purchase. You're going to get 2 tickets for $67 or $66.
Yeah, and they range from basically $66 to $100
for a pair.
For a pair,
not just single, a pair. Like,
it's a pretty good deal. Yeah,
that is a impulse Christmas present right there, or birthday present, or something along those lines. Like, I actually think it's a pretty smart idea, and it's also makes me happy that I'm a Notre Dame fan too. There is that Notre Dame doesn't have to stoop to that level. But
I do wonder though, like for the the Northern Illinois and the Miami, Ohio games, like could Notre Dame benefit from going this route? Because
it's fair.
I would think that we're going to see pockets of emptiness there for those games.
It's helpful. Those schools are pretty close. That's helpful. True. What I mean? Like you're talking about 4.5 hours to Miami and probably about maybe 2.5, 3 hours to Northern Illinois. And that's a destination game, because a lot of times these MAC schools play someplace pretty far away, like at LSU or Florida State or, something along those lines. I think one of the teams is playing at Washington. That's a little bit harder to make that trip. You know what I mean? But at least you're within driving distance and you can actually make the trip to the big school that the MAC team is playing. So it won't be as hard, but you make a good point that that's not a terrible way to get rid of some of the tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like when you're talking about Baylor, Indiana, Louisville, Minnesota, Nevada, Rutgers, Tulane, Virginia, I'm sure that they all, have to get a little bit creative when it comes to their ticket marketing strategies. So USMA 87 says tons of Northern Illinois tickets available, some down on the lower level near the end zone. And
there's plenty of time between now and then, but I'm not surprised by that.
Really, since that sellout streak ended when they didn't, because you remember for a long time they kept that sellout streak going.
Yeah.
But there were like some local benefactors who would basically buy up all the tickets to keep that streak alive. And since that stopped, you've definitely seen some empty seats out there in the stadium.
Sure have.
Much more often. So Vince, Glenn Powell, who played Hangman in Top Gun Maverick, says the name of his character in the original script was actually Slayer instead of Hangman. They started workshopping new names like Sauce. Sauce was one of the names that they came up with.
I like that one.
That was one of the options before they ultimately came up with Hangman. So did they get it right ultimately by going with Hangman?
I like Hangman. I do. I think it kind of has like a little bit of a Wild West, hint to it. It's simple. It's one word. There's a lot of things that go into a good call sign, I think, and it hits a lot. It checks all those boxes for me. So I do think that they got it right. Absolutely.
And like the visual on the helmet.
Yes.
Remember there was like a blank letters for one of the letters.
Yeah. There was one of the letters. Yeah. I do remember it. And I think that was genius.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Sauce is interesting because you got like Sauce Gardner,
Yeah.
But I think Hangman is a really good, I think 2 syllables is a really good. And apparently in this interview that I heard with Rich Eisen that Powell had, he said he talked to some of the naval aviators and they were telling him the difference between like Navy call signs and Air Force call signs, like Air Force fighter pilot call signs. And like Slayer was much more an Air Force. They were like, like Slayer and Crusher and, those kind of, like harder edged were like the Air Force, whereas the naval guys kind of, just more like Hangman tended to have more fun with it, I guess. So, So that's, so they got away from Slayer. They went with Hangman. Yeah, I think they completely got it right. I thought it was a good call sign. But apparently all those guys, all the different pilots had a say in what their call signs were in the movie. So they were tossing out a lot of different ideas. So
Nice.
Back to Slayer.
Yeah.
It's the name of a metal band. So my question is, what rock or pop group would you pick for your call sign?
You do realize it was me on the show today, right? The guy who doesn't listen to a whole lot of music.
I knew that this would be,
Okay.
it definitely cranked up the level of difficulty. I know.
It did. It really did.
I mean, it was hard for me even to think of like some good ones.
Yeah.
So,
The best thing I could come up with was Aerosmith. Kind of like that one. It's a name of a band. That. It's one word. Like, I like that one. So I went with Aerosmith.
So I had a lot of ideas, and Aerosmith did kind of, go through my head a little bit. Flock of Seagulls. I like that.
Too long, though. It's too long.
I know. See, like the first one that I thought of was Fine Young Cannibals. Underrated, 80s pop group. She Drives Me Crazy and all that. But Fine Young Cannibals is definitely too long for call sign. Right? So there's some different ones. Fugazi came to mind. I think that is a cool name, but I don't know really any of their music. I just know, like Fugazi would just sound cool, I think.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go with that if I didn't know their music. So I came down to a couple because it's a band name. Really what I wanted to do was like the name of a song, like the more I started thinking about it, I thought about like Monkey Wrench, I thought would be, it's a Foo Fighters song. I thought that's it, like, I'm your monkey wrench. I'm going to throw a wrench into your day. Like that kind of thing.
Like that one, actually.
But it came down to me. I went with Dire Straits for mine. Like, I still feel like, like here comes Dire Straits, like that kind of thing.
Sounds like kind of Air Force-ish.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
It's good,
Devo. That's a good one, USMA. I like that.
Yeah.
He said Pet Shop Boys as well. I like that. But might be a little bit long. That's the problem. It's like you get to 3 words and like six syllables. Like Fine Young Cannibals. You're at 5. Too long, too many syllables. So, is there a sports related handle you would pick?
Cubby Bear.
I like that.
Was what I was going to go with. I think
Cubby
it fits. I think it fits. Maybe it's long. I'm not sure, but like you could shorten it, to Cubby or something like that if you're just talking, that kind of a thing. Cub, But I went with Cubby Bear.
I went with Hitman.
Oh, really?
Hitman. Yeah.
What now? What's the
Here
reference?
comes Hitman. I mean, Hitman. Like Bret the Hitman Hart. It's more pro wrestling.
Gotcha.
But it's some that I thought of. Grand Slam, Top Rope. Again, it's like a wrestling kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But I went 2 syllables. I thought Hitman sounded pretty good. Grand Slam. But I like your Cubby Bear. I like that as well. That says, that basically says kind of where you're from, who you're for.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I'm, kind of big like a bear. So there.
Baldwin, Fighting Irishman. John said.
I thought of like Irishman, like just simple Irishman or something like that. I did think about that. Yeah.
Cannon Arm. Macho Man. Here comes the Macho Man. Coldplay. That's not a bad one.
Oh, yeah.
Baldwin's Aaron going back to the music group. Angel of Death. Angel, like the Eagles of Death Metal. Dice.
I like Dice.
Dice Man instead of Ice Man. That's a good one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
There you go.
But is that really sports? Or are we?
I think they're just coming up.
It's
with
still
good
a good
names
call sign,
but yeah.
But still, yeah.
Yeah.
Undertaker, always a good one. USMA also says Vince FOF, father of 5. I thought about TNT. Like I said, like when I was back, like TNT, when I was like, if it was a song instead of like the actual band name TNT, I thought would be good because you're gonna blow it up. So Hamburglar, I love it.
Nice, that's a good one.
Tommy slipping one in just before the wire.
That's a good one.
Of the show.
The Hamburglar. That's
Yes.
fantastic. You could have some fun with that helmet, like what you
Yep.
wanted to paint on there and stuff. Yeah, that's a good one.
For sure.
That's a good one.
All right. Well, we will wrap things up with that. Have a great 4th. No show tomorrow because it's the 4th of July. No show Thursday because it's the 4th of July. But we're going to do the We In, We Out show on Friday. It's going to be busy day. As, of course, everybody knows, there's a big commitment coming up Friday. So if things go Notre Dame's way, there will be a commitment show. I think there's going to be a mailbag show earlier in the day.
We are going to do a show that day, but we are going to do the mailbag show on Saturday.
Oh, that's right. Mailbag show
noon.
Saturday.
Yes. Right. And so we are going to have a regular show at 1:00 and then maybe a show in the afternoon and then Friday show. So
Friday, 5:00 will be We In, We Out.
Right.
And of course, the only place you can submit the questions for We In, We Out is on the Champions Lounge. Started a thread there today, so go to the Champions Lounge thread. Get your We In, We Out questions for Friday. It'll be Vince and me on Friday. Oops, doing that We In, We Out show. No Jesse, it looks like, this Friday because he's doing God knows what.
God knows what.
Don't blow yourself up tomorrow, but have fun on the 4th. And we will talk to you Friday on IB Nation Sports Talk.
See ya.